do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 YouTube, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. Great day. It is Friday. Colts had a joint practice against the Green Bay Packers yesterday. They're going to have their second preseason game tomorrow. Daniel Jones is set to start. He'll play about 2 drives, and then it'll flip over to Anthony Richardson, the guy that everyone should, not does, but should want to be the Indianapolis Colts starting quarterback. And hopefully tomorrow goes significantly better than how yesterday went. The Colts offense yesterday was not very good per every single report. No one seemed to play well. Wide receivers were dropping balls. Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson both threw some interceptions. The offensive line couldn't block anybody. They couldn't run the football. And when Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones had time, it resulted in a turnover. It was not a good day for this Indianapolis Colts offense, while the defense did hold their own against the Malik Willis-led Green Bay Packers, because Jordan Love is out after having surgery on his left thumb. So let's start with the offensive line, because this is the most important part of the Colts offense. Whether it's Daniel Jones under center or Anthony Richardson, it all starts up front with this offensive line. And this Colts offensive line, we've been told, is supposed to be good. We got Chris Ballard as the general manager. The trenches. It's the most important thing to him. But the Colts' pass protection last year wasn't very good. And yesterday it wasn't very good. It was a rough day. 5 sacks given up to this Green Bay Packers defensive line. They also couldn't stop committing penalties, which is very, very problematic. Penalties and sacks. If your offensive line is giving up both of those things, then you are in for a long season where you don't win very many football games, especially when you have a quarterback like Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, who, aren't exactly going to overcome dysfunctional things happening around them. Shane Steichen didn't sound too concerned with the pressures. He thinks that that's something that they can get cleaned up. He is much more concerned about the penalties that the offensive line committed yesterday in their joint practice against the Green Bay Packers.
They give up a lot of pressure today.
Well, I think more than anything is penalties. I mean, every time I looked up, I felt like, we were in the backfield or illegal formation. So we got to get that cleaned up. Obviously, penalties are a big part of those things. That's hidden yardage. You don't want to have that happen in the game. That just comes down to focus. And so we got to get that cleaned up, move forward.
Is that you see like a theme there at all with those penalties?
Yeah, I think it's just obviously locking in. It's, when you get hot and it's tired, that's when the focus has really got to pick up and lock in. Because when you are tired, that's when the most mistakes happen in football. So it's just, locking in mentally and going from there.
Oh, the Colts offensive line was tired. They were tired. So they committed. That's mentally weak. That's what it is. And here I am, 5'8", 180 pounds, calling guys like Quentin Nelson mentally weak because they can't handle the heat. I know. Doesn't sound great, but it's true. You can't I get it. It was hot yesterday. I played pickleball for 2.5 hours because that's totally the same thing as playing football against the Packers. But yeah, it's hot. So what? It's part of it. You can't allow a little bit of heat to ruin a practice. You can't allow that to ruin your focus. Like that, as many penalties that like that cannot happen. Seriously, like the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens and the Rams and the Eagles and all these teams with really good quarterbacks, they can overcome penalties. The Indianapolis Colts cannot overcome penalties with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson playing quarterback. The most important thing for the Colts offense this year is going to be the ability to stay on schedule, to get to 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, because they need their full playbook optional for Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. Because when it's 3rd and 8 and the defense knows, yeah, all right, Jonathan Taylor, he's on the field, but we know that they're not going to hand him the football. We can drop back into our zone, or we can play man-to-man, or, if Anthony Richardson's playing quarterback, like we can blitz him. Then it's going to be really problematic. But 3rd and 3, when Jonathan Taylor is a threat to be handed the football, when Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones is a threat to keep the football and, run 9 feet to pick up a first down, and the whole playbook is available, like the Colts are going to have a pretty good chance to convert those things. But if it's 3rd and 3 and there's, an illegal formation because an offensive lineman's lined up in the backfield, or there's a false start and 3rd and 3 becomes 3rd and 8, just punt on 3rd down. Not really, but you know what I'm saying. Penalties cannot happen to the Colts this year because that is an absolute death sentence given who their quarterback is going to be, whether it's Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. The good thing, I expect for this issue to be fixed. Many questions about Shane Steichen entering year 3. Can he develop Anthony Richardson? Can he fix Daniel Jones? Can he not call trick plays and, high pressure moments of football games? To his credit, the one thing that the Colts have been very consistent about during his 2 years as the head coach, they don't commit penalties. They were the least penalized team in the NFL last year, the Indianapolis Colts were. And, people who love Shane Steichen will say, oh, that points to discipline, which is, I don't know if it does or not. That's just what people would say. So the Colts can't commit penalties like they did yesterday. And it is something that I believe will be fixed given the very short track record of Shane Steichen here in Indianapolis. So is that a concerning thing? Yes. But nowhere near as concerning is the fact that they couldn't protect Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones against this Packers front. Because the Packers front is not very good. When you look at their starting defensive linemen, the Green Bay Packers have 0 guys that have ever had a double-digit sack season, and they had 5 sacks as a team yesterday. Rashawn Gary never had a double-digit sack season. Kenny Clark has never had more than 7.5 sacks in a season. Devontae Wyatt has never had more than 5.5 sacks in a season. Lucas Van Ness, a guy that Indianapolis Colts fans are praying that Leatu Latu does not turn into. Lucas Van Ness, former first-round pick. He has 7 sacks in his first 2 years in the NFL. He had 3 his rookie year. He had 4 last year. They don't have a good pass rush. They don't have anyone along that defensive line that you say, hey, we have to double team this guy. Like, that's not a thing when you play the Packers. And so the fact that the Colts couldn't handle that Packers pass rush is incredibly concerning. And I talked yesterday about how this Indianapolis Colts team should be able to run the football, right? This is an offensive line that helped the Colts generate a top 10 rushing offense in the NFL last year. That's what they were. They couldn't throw the football, but the reason why they won 8 games is because Jonathan Taylor ran for 1,400 yards in 14 games. This offensive line should be able to run block. The pass protection last year, though, wasn't very good. Wasn't very good at all. Anthony Richardson was the 16th most hurried quarterback in the NFL. And I say that, and you're like, oh, that's average. Yeah. And then we just remember that Anthony Richardson missed 6 games last year. If he'd played in all 17, then the number wouldn't have been very good. It wouldn't have been good. Okay. So I'm not concerned about the Colts and their ability to run block. I'm just like, I'm not. I understand that yesterday they didn't run the football very well either, but running in running in training camp is very different than running the football during the actual season, because Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, they're in the red jerseys, and the defense knows that the Colts aren't the Ravens aren't going to run Lamar Jackson in training camp in a joint practice. They're not going to do that. That would be dumb. The risk is far greater than the reward. With that being said, it's the exact same thing for the Colts. The risk of running Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones in training camp is far greater than the reward. So, when the season starts and defenses actually have to account for the quarterback as well as the running back in terms of the run game, I do think that the Colts will run the football better than what they did yesterday. But the pass protection, very concerning after last year and the practice that they had yesterday. But there's time to remedy this. Saturday, tomorrow, if they go out there and they pass protect well, then not a big deal. I will no longer be concerned. By the way, the Colts are expected to play their starters for the first quarter. And then after that, it'll be Anthony Richardson behind the backup offensive line. So smart. I still can't believe that they're going to do that. Incredible. So it was a rough day for the Colts offense. It started up front with the offensive line, unable to run block, unable to, protect the quarterback, unable to not commit dumb penalties. Very problematic. And because of that, Daniel Jones wasn't good. Daniel Jones was still efficient despite the bad pass protection. Daniel Jones was 13 of 16 passing, 81% completion percentage. Everything I read doesn't look like Daniel Jones had a passing touchdown on the day. 2 of his 3 incompletions were interceptions. First one, not his fault. He apparently hit A.D. Mitchell in the hands on a crossing route over the middle. But as I said, rough day for the offense as a whole. A.D. Mitchell dropped it. There's the A.D. Mitchell we know. And it fell into Packers cornerback Keeson Nixon's hands. The second interception, definitely on Daniel Jones. They're doing the 2-minute drill. And this is the thing. I think this is really important because I've talked about this all offseason with Daniel Jones. They're in the 2-minute drill. The defense knows that he's throwing the football. And he throws an interception right to Isaiah Simmons, backup linebacker on the Green Bay Packers. This is the concern with Daniel Jones. When the offense is on time and there's a threat to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor, there's a threat for Daniel Jones to run the read option and hold on to the football himself. He's fine. He's not good in those situations. He's fine. He's average. He can be your starting quarterback. But when there's 2 minutes left on the clock and you've got 1 timeout and you're trying to drive the length of the field and the defense knows that you're throwing the football, that is where the Daniel Jones issues start to arise. Because, he doesn't have a big arm. He's not squeezing the ball into small windows. It's tougher to scheme guys open whenever the defense knows you're throwing the football. You can't rely on play action. You just have to drop back and make a play. This is where the shortcomings of Daniel Jones start to show up. Oh, and also, you only have 2 minutes to get down the field. So hitting Jonathan Taylor in the flat repeatedly, not really going to work. You need a chunk play in there somewhere. And Daniel Jones just isn't going to be the guy to get you that. Simple as that. He was asked after practice about how he felt like the offense operated. He just said that the offense wasn't very sharp. But aside from the 2 interceptions, one not being his fault, seems like Daniel Jones had a pretty normal Daniel Jones day. A lot of safe completions. That's who he is. Right? He apparently made one nice throw on a deep crossing route to Josh Downs. Aside from that, a normal Daniel Jones day out there at practice. Average quarterback play with a couple mistakes. But the couple mistakes cannot happen if Daniel Jones wants to win the job and keep the job. The year he made the playoffs with the New York Giants, he only threw 5 interceptions, the lowest mark of his career, and the highest number of games he has played in a single season. If he's going to be check down Charlie, not push the ball down the field, he has to play mistake-free football. He can't turn the ball over twice and also not make up for it with his inability to push the football down the field. In a real game, if Daniel Jones turns the football over twice, chalk it up as a loss because the Colts offense won't be dynamic enough to overcome those mistakes if Daniel Jones is their starting quarterback. Anthony Richardson also got a fair number of snaps yesterday. And it wasn't much better. In fact, he had a worse day than Daniel Jones. I'll tell you why in 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Dan Dockage is back today, noon to 3. Should be a lot of fun. He was out playing at the Live Pro-Am yesterday, so I'm sure he'll have a lot of stories about that. Colts-Packers practice yesterday did not go very well for the Indianapolis Colts offense. The offensive line committed a ton of penalties, gave up a bunch of sacks. Daniel Jones threw not one but 2 interceptions. Outside of that, he was pretty good. But then again, can you be pretty good when you throw 2 interceptions? I don't know. Anthony Richardson was worse, though. Anthony Richardson was worse than Daniel Jones yesterday. He threw less interceptions than Daniel Jones. He threw 1 compared to Daniel Jones's 2. Just right over the middle. Threw it right to Jonathan Baldwin. Jonathan Baldwin's probably a beast because guys named Jonathan tend to be beasts. Overall, it's like a rookie year from Anthony Richardson. 9 of 20 passing. It's a 45% completion percentage. All the Anthony Richardson haters right now are rejoicing. Now, one of Richardson's completions was a red zone touchdown to Michael Pittman Jr., so there's more touchdown passes than Daniel Jones right there. And then he put together a very impressive 2-minute drive to close practice. 3 straight completions, and then he turns around and he hands it off to Jonathan Taylor, who runs the football in from 5 yards out. And outside of that, though, it doesn't sound like he was very good. A good 2-minute drill and a lot of not very good quarterback play from Anthony Richardson. He also capped off the touchdown by converting on a 2-point conversion. Apparently, there were a couple drops with him playing quarterback as well, but only 2 drops. So, sure, he could have been 11 of 20. 55% completion percentage. Yay. Right? So, it wouldn't have really improved it by that much. This, when I was reading all this and keeping up with the practice updates, sounds like Anthony Richardson from last year. That's what it sounds like. There's some, a lot of bad. 9 or 20, obviously not very good. And then all of a sudden, he just looks awesome. Ripping the ball all over the field in the 2-minute drill, 3 passing plays. You look up and you're in the red zone. That's impressive. And this is the best version of Anthony Richardson right there. Dropping back, letting it rip, layering footballs in, pushing the ball down the field. But he apparently missed a lot of those throws as well, because 9 of 20 is concerning. I am not the completion percentage rules all guy. I think that's been made very clear. But it's really tough to win football games when your quarterback's 9 of 20 passing. That's just the very simple reality of it. And so while his completion percentage doesn't need to be 70%, Anthony Richardson will likely, and I say likely because we've seen Lamar Jackson really improve as a passer over the course of his career. We've seen Josh Allen obviously do it as well. But Anthony Richardson will likely not be a 68% completion percentage guy at any point in his career. He's hopefully going to be able to get to the mid-60s. Can he complete 65% of his passes? That, paired with the running, paired with his aggressiveness and pushing the football down the field, should be enough for the Colts to win a lot of games. That's the hope. But that wasn't it yesterday. A lot of bad throws, but hey, the 2-minute drill was good. I want Anthony Richardson to be the starter. I still think that it's going to be Daniel Jones because of days like yesterday. Daniel Jones, clearly more consistent than Anthony Richardson was. Anthony Richardson, up and down. It's year 3. You can't have days like this. You have to be consistent. And when you look at the two guys throughout the course of camp, Daniel Jones has been more consistent than Anthony Richardson. These are unofficial numbers, but Daniel Jones was unofficially 138 of 194 in team sessions. That is a 71% completion percentage. That's really good. Anthony Richardson finished 110 of 183. So before yesterday, he looked good, but then yesterday happened, and that knocked his completion percentage down to 60%. That's not good enough. That's not good enough in a practice setting. That's not consistent enough in a practice setting, because you should perform better in practice than you do in the games. That is usually, not always, that is usually how that works. And the difference, obviously, because look, if you'd asked me before training camp, who's going to have the higher completion percentage, the answer was going to be Daniel Jones, just because of how he plays the quarterback position stylistically. Anthony Richardson, pushes the ball down the field more than Jones, so his completion percentage was going to be lower. But it needed to be like Daniel Jones completed 71% of his passes, and Anthony Richardson completed 66% of his passes, for it to be like a clear Anthony Richardson should be the starting quarterback kind of thing. And it's not. Doesn't sound like the Colts are any closer to making a decision in terms of who the starting quarterback is going to be. I'm sure they're closer than they were at the start of camp, but they continue to keep this pretty close to the vest. Shane Steichen was asked about it. He said there's no hurry, but they would like to make the decision as early as possible. And then he said this, and this statement from Shane Steichen reveals all of the issues with the Indianapolis Colts right now.
I think so. I think that's part of it. I think obviously it's a big decision that's got to be made, and we'll work through it. And I'll have discussions, with Carly and Chris, and we'll work through it here soon.
Did you hear that? Did you hear the final comments from Shane Steichen? Listen to the last 5 seconds of this again.
And we'll work through it, and I'll have discussions, with Carly and Chris, and we'll work through it here soon.
We'll work through it, and I'll have discussions with Carly and Chris, and we'll work through it. That is so incredibly problematic for the Indianapolis Colts. Carly Ursay and Chris Ballard should have zero say in regard to who the starting quarterback is. Someone followed up with a question of basically asking who's really going to make this decision. And Shane was like, I'm making the decision, but I'm taking their input. No, there should be zero input from Carly Ursay and Chris Ballard. I understand that Chris Ballard is the general manager. I understand that Carly Ursay is now the owner, and she spent years down on the sideline with the headset on, and she's very football savvy, apparently. I get that. But Shane Steichen's the head coach. If Carly Ursay and Chris Ballard do not trust Shane Steichen to make the proper decision when it comes to who the starting quarterback is going to be, then he needs to be fired. He needs to be fired if they do not trust him to make such I get it, it's an important decision, but he's the guy who, he's out there every day. He understands his offense and what he wants to do better than Carly Ursay and better than Chris Ballard. You know who knows the most about those two quarterbacks? How about the guy who's sitting in meetings with them every single day, running through practice tape? I think that's the guy who should really have the only say. It should be him, Jim Bob Cooter, and whoever the quarterback coach is. Those are the only three people who should have any sort of say in who the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts should be. Carly Ursay, no. Go sit in the box, watch the games, and trust your head coach to make a decision. Chris Ballard, you've been here 9 years. You've won the division 0 times. You haven't made the playoffs in 4 years. I don't think his opinion should be inputted on anything, quite frankly. This needs to be Shane Steichen's decision and his decision only. He's the one hanging out with these players every single day. He's the one in the meetings. He should have a better idea of what the locker room wants, because that should matter as well. More so than Carly Ursay and Chris Ballard, because ultimately it is his team. And it is his job on the line this year. And Chris Ballard, I can tell you right now who he's going to go to bat for. He's going to go to bat for Anthony Richardson. Like, that is what he's going to argue for. Carly Ursay, she hasn't been around long enough for us to know what she wants. But if she's like everybody else, she's probably going to want Anthony Richardson because he is significantly more exciting. And I get it. She's football savvy. But you know what else she is? The owner of the Indianapolis Colts, which means that she wants for the business, because that's what it is, to be as profitable as possible. And I'm telling you right now, Anthony Richardson is going to put significantly more butts in seats than Daniel Jones does. So her opinion will be slighted by non-football matters. Chris Ballard's opinion will be slighted by who he decided to draft 4th overall. Shane Steichen shouldn't talk to these people at all. Shouldn't take their input at all on who should be the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. It needs to be his decision and his decision only. Simple as that. Jeez, the Colts, man, just driving me crazy. I'm also sick of this thing that I keep seeing, and it just speaks to the ignorance of Colts fans and some of, not all of, and some of the people who write about the Colts. I am so sick of hearing about how the Indianapolis Colts wide receivers did in one-on-ones. I don't care. This is the dumbest thing ever. Did you know that NFL wide receivers are incredible athletes and they always win their one-on-ones? Because defending these freaks in space is impossible. It is impossible. And now, like, for me, I care way more about the cornerback side of it. So, like, if, the insiders want to tweet out, Charvarius Ward has only given up 3 receptions on 10 attempts in the one-on-ones, then, like, that actually means something. But hearing that A.D. Mitchell did really well in one-on-ones again means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Nothing whatsoever. You know why? You know how often you get like a truly one-on-one matchup at wide receiver in the NFL? Very rarely. Usually there's safety help over the top. If you're a really good receiver, they'll run like a bracket coverage. They'll roll coverage your way. It is very rare that you just get, we're just going to line up man-to-man. No safety help. Like, that's just not a thing. It is the dumbest thing ever to hear people talk about how great A.D. Mitchell is because he keeps winning his one-on-ones. You know who else has won a lot of their one-on-ones during this, Colts training camp? Every single wide receiver. Any NFL receiver worth their salt, unless they're, taking on like Sauce Gardner or Patrick Surtain, they're going to win their one-on-ones. Because defending these NFL wide receivers is next to impossible. It's like the NBA. If you play, you take the best defender in the sport. Okay, who would that be? Let me make this easier on myself. You could take prime Kawhi Leonard, one of the best defenders in the history of the NBA, and that is not a hyperbolic statement. I would fight anybody on that. And you could put him on Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's still going to score 8 times out of 10 because he's Kevin freaking Durant, and stopping NBA players one-on-one with no help defense is near impossible. It is the exact same thing in the NFL with these wide receivers. Stopping these guys one-on-one is near impossible because you have NFL-level quarterbacks who should, most of the time, make the right throw, and they should put the ball in the correct spot. I'm so sick of hearing about how the Colts wide receivers did in one-on-ones because it means absolutely zero. Speaking of one-on-ones, the Colts secondary had a strong day yesterday. Very strong day yesterday. And that's a good sign. It sounds like the Colts defense performed yesterday how they should have performed last year against the Packers. More on that in 4 minutes.
Dan Dockage at noon. The real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, wherever you download your apps. Colts had a really rough practice yesterday against the Green Bay Packers offensively, but the defense had a pretty nice day. I said yesterday that the Colts secondary needed to be sharp because it's freaking Malik Willis That didn't matter last year. But then again, the Packers only had to throw the football 14 times in that game to win it. So that's probably part of it. But the Colts secondary yesterday seems to have been pretty sharp. I think the big thing that I've seen everyone kind of highlight was the first team offense for the Packers, their final drive, 2-minute drill stuff. The Packers went 4 and out. Malik Willis was 0 for throwing the football. That's exactly how it should be when you're playing against a backup quarterback, especially when you go and you spend a bunch of money on Charvarius Ward and you go and you spend a bunch of money on Cam Bynum. Those two guys should elevate this secondary, even with the injuries, to Kenny Moore and Justin Wally and Juju Brents and Jalen Jones. Obviously, 3 of those 4 guys should be back at some point. Justin Wally obviously tore his ACL, and he's out for the rest of the season. But this has to be a strength for the Colts defense. And when you're playing against Malik Willis, it has to be a great day. Even when you have all of the cornerback injuries that the Indianapolis Colts do, and by all accounts, it seemed like a really good day for this Colts secondary. Charvarius Ward, hopefully, is going to help uplift this defense quite a bit. Now, the front 7 seemed like it had like an okay day, not a great day, not a terrible day. But there is a couple things to note here. Leatu Latu and Adamatomiwa Adabore, they both had sacks. Leatu Latu had 2. And when it comes to this front 7, I have just kind of given up hope, and it's definitely too early for me to do that. I'm probably overreacting to that game against the preseason game to the Ravens. But I have come to terms with the fact that in order for this Colts front 7 to be okay, Leatu Latu has to develop. I have harped on the lack of talent on this Colts front 7 time and time again. There's no talent at linebacker. There's not enough depth along the defensive line. There's no elite pass rusher. You've heard me give those rants multiple times now. Leatu Latu has to become a dude if the Colts are going to have any semblance of a consistent pass rush. And that, paired with Charvarius Ward and Cam Bynum on the back end, hopefully helping to lift up this Colts defense, hopefully that'll be enough for the Colts to get some stops. I've talked about the importance of the run game for the Colts this year because, I don't trust either one of these quarterbacks. The defense has to be better as well. I think that we would all be very surprised to see how many points the Colts scored last year, given the poor quarterback play from Joe Flacco and Daniel Jones. From Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. They were still able to put some points up on the board. Like, they weren't a top 10 offense, but they were the league average. That's what, they averaged 22 points a game. Like, that was the 16th most in the NFL. Like, they had an average offense despite the bad quarterback play. The issue last year, more than anything else, was the defense. They couldn't get stops. They couldn't get off the field on third down. In the red zone, they gave up touchdowns as opposed to holding teams to field goals. And this year, if Leatu Latu can develop and Charvarius Ward and Cam Bynum can just stay healthy on the back end, I'm hoping that's enough for this Colts defense to just be average. Now, the bad news from camp yesterday for the Colts, more injuries. Josh Downs has a hamstring problem, and Samson Ebukam, coming off of the Achilles tear, he's got an issue with his back. And look, Josh Downs getting hurt, does it suck? Absolutely. But I feel really good about the depth that the Colts have at wide receiver, especially since A.D. Mitchell has had a pretty good camp thus far. Apparently yesterday was pretty up and down. He made a couple impressive plays, also had a couple bad plays. For example, he had a pass, hit his hands, and he dropped it, and it led to an interception. I just saw the video of it. It's pretty brutal. I feel like I could have caught that if I was first able to create the separation, which probably wouldn't have happened. But still, he still has some moments here and there like that. But if he's having to fill in for Josh Downs or whoever, I think that I'm pretty okay with that. Ebukam, though, that can't happen. Like, this defensive line has got to stay healthy because it is thin. Now, the Colts have an opportunity tomorrow, the offense especially. They have an opportunity to redeem some of the issues that they had. Daniel Jones is going to start for the Colts. He's going to play about 2 drives. But Anthony Richardson, he's going to play most of the first half, right? He's going to get every snap after those first 2 drives from Daniel Jones. That should hopefully be about a quarter and a half. Anthony Richardson knows what everyone wants to see from him. And he talked about it a little bit yesterday after practice.
For one, stay healthy, stay in the game. That's probably the biggest thing I need to, focus on and be able to just be out there on the field, because the best ability is availability. So I just want to make sure I'm staying healthy throughout the game and throughout the season. But, just making my reads, doing my job as a quarterback, moving the ball, putting up points, just doing what a quarterback should do.
Did you have that?
Anthony Richardson right there talking about the importance of staying healthy. And, there's been a lot of talk about his offseason work and what he's done to get better and all these things. And I think he sounds a little bit more mature at the microphone. It's not perfect. Don't worry. I got more audio on that. But this is the biggest thing. He cannot get hurt. He used the very cliche statement, the best ability is availability. And, that's true. I hate cliches, but he is correct. Good job, Anthony. If you're not playing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he can throw the football over those mountains. It doesn't matter that he's incredibly fast. He has got to stay healthy. And something that I'm so glad I have not had to waste time talking about this offseason is whether or not Anthony Richardson is going to slide. I hope he does, especially tomorrow in a freaking preseason game. Please slide tomorrow. I am begging you, Anthony Richardson, to get down and just play the whole game. If he wants any sort of chance at winning this starting quarterback job over Daniel Jones, I literally think if he can just play a quarter and a half, he's going to have a pretty decent chance. Because this is the biggest question with him. Can he stay healthy? Now, obviously, after the importance of him staying healthy, he has to do what I've been saying all training camp long tomorrow. He has to make the easy things look easy. He doesn't have to be Superman for all the drives that he's in there. If he's Clark Kent on Saturday, that will go a long way in terms of him earning the starting job for the Indianapolis Colts. Okay? Just be Clark Kent. Complete the slant routes, hit Jonathan Taylor in the flat a couple times, and then occasionally, when it's 3rd and 9 and you need something cool to happen, take off the suit, go full Superman, and let's make a play. Just a little bit of magic. Don't need it all the time. Just a little bit. And then maybe, just maybe, you'll actually be named the franchise quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. He was asked yesterday if he understood all the different parts of being a franchise quarterback going into his 3rd year in the NFL.
I feel like I have an idea of it. I wouldn't say I have a complete understanding of it yet because, I haven't been tagged as the franchise guy yet. So there's still some things I'm trying to learn. But, I definitely know a little bit more about the NFL and how things should be, taken care of and how your business should be put first. But, I'm just working and I'm just trying to be the best version of myself for everybody that's here.
Anthony Richardson right there talking about understanding what it is to be a franchise quarterback. First and foremost, I appreciate the self-awareness to say that he understands that he's not the franchise guy yet. It would have been a major red flag if our guy Anthony Richardson had been like, as the franchise quarterback, I'd have been like, whoa, did Shane Steichen tell you something that he hasn't told anybody else? So the fact that he understands that, he didn't give us some arrogant answer. And look, he's probably right. He doesn't understand everything about it because he's not the franchise guy. But given everything that happened last year, I do believe him when he says, and I do agree with him when he says that he has a better understanding of what comes with it, of how you need to take care of your business as the starting quarterback or as a quarterback in the NFL, and you have to do a little bit more. I've been playing sound bites from Anthony Richardson all training camp of him talking about that, right? Of him talking about how he's been, studying his playbook more. I know that I ripped him for saying over on Sirius XM radio that, that he wants to master the playbook. And I, question like, what have you been doing, man? But it's no secret. He's been a bit immature since he got into the league. But this is year 3. It feels like we're going to find out more when the season begins and if he's the starting quarterback. We're going to find out more about his maturity level as the season goes on. Because I think it's really easy to fake it in the short term. I mean, training camp has been a month long, if that. And very easy to fake something for a month. But can he be a more mature Anthony Richardson throughout a full, 18-week season as the starting quarterback? That's something that we haven't seen. And I refuse to, just be like, yeah, franchise guy until we see that. Because being mature is so incredibly important. It is. I think it's part of why, Colin Kaepernick didn't last in the NFL for a super long time. That, and obviously the fact that, after that first year with the Niners, he was figured out pretty quickly after that. Cam Newton, same thing. Because the NFL has reached a point where every starting quarterback is a celebrity in some sense, especially locally, just because the league is so big. Like I'm pretty sure, I would bet money on this. If Anthony Richardson went to, let me think, Alabama, people would know who he is because he's the number 4 overall pick who is probably going to be the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, right? Like that's just what comes with being an NFL quarterback. And so that's fine. I think that's normal. What you cannot have is a backup quarterback who has celebrity. It's why Tim Tebow didn't stick around. Like he was going to be a backup, and you don't want a clown show from your backup quarterback. It's part of why the Patriots moved away from Cam Newton, because Cam Newton was a really big celebrity. Not a clown show. That's probably not a fair way to describe the Tim Tebow stuff or the Cam Newton stuff. But when your backup quarterback is a celebrity, it just makes everything tougher. That's part of the uphill battle that Shedeur Sanders is fighting over in Cleveland. And so can Richardson just be a normal dude? Like I think Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, their abilities to just kind of like downplay everything, to make everything sound like it's not a very big deal, that is such a valuable thing. Because the loudest franchises tend to lose the most. It's not a coincidence that the franchises that don't say anything and aren't discussed a ton, it's not a surprise that they win a lot. Like the Packers, probably going to win the NFC North. How much have you heard about the Packers? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Okay. Meanwhile, you're hearing about the Vikings all the time because, JJ McCarthy, there's questions and new coordinators in Detroit. You don't hear anything about the Packers ever. And all they do is win 11 games every single year. You know who we hear about all the time? The Cleveland Browns. And they win 5 games a year consistently. And that's it. Quiet teams tend to win the most. The Chiefs, they're only discussed for their winning. You know who I've heard more about this offseason than Patrick Mahomes? Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Haven't heard much out of the Chiefs until the Taylor Swift interview with Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce. Okay, so quiet teams win. Can Anthony Richardson be a quiet guy that people aren't discussing and talking about a ton outside of him playing well? Because that was an issue last year. We had like a whole 2-week saga on the tap out. Like that led ESPN, that led national shows. That cannot happen this year. And I do think that Anthony Richardson has the proper demeanor and the proper personality to be a quiet guy. He just has to not do dumb things like tap out or record more rap music videos. Just be a normal dude and say as little as possible. And then the rest of figuring out what it means to be a franchise quarterback should come pretty quickly. The Colts also need to figure out how to run the football better because they ran it poorly against the Baltimore Ravens. More on that in 4 minutes.
Let's do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 99 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, hop in the chat to be part of the conversation. Maybe you're watching on X _ Jonathan Smith. Follow the show there. And, yeah, to watch the show there and follow me there, you can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. You can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show on the app from noon to 3 today. He is back. Eddie White and Sean Salisbury joining his show today. We're all Colts all day over here talking about the preseason game coming up against the Green Bay Packers tomorrow afternoon. Can't wait. It's at home. The roof, I think, is going to be closed, which is incredibly dumb. They always close the roof. What's the point in having a roof if you're never going to open it? I don't know. I don't get it. Maybe it's nuance, and I'm just not smart enough to understand it. I doubt that that's what it is, but they play tomorrow. Kickoff at 1 o'clock. Can't wait. So what do I want to see from the Colts? I talked a little bit about Anthony Richardson. He needs to stay healthy. He needs to play the full quarter and a half, and then he needs to do the thing that I've been saying all offseason. He just needs to make the easy things look easy and just do a couple of crazy things, and then the job will be his. The question is just whether or not he can do those things. So in addition to that, I would like to see the Colts run the football a little bit better than what they did. Like if you go look at the numbers, 28 carries, 126 yards, and a touchdown, right? And that averages out to like 4.5 yards a carry. And you're like, oh, that's pretty good. Yes, but Riley Leonard was the Colts' leading rusher with 4 carries for 34 yards. In terms of their ability to turn around and hand the football off to DJ Giddens or Tyler Goodson or, Ulysses Bentley IV, it wasn't very good. Like their ability to consistently run the football off of traditional handoffs really struggled. Like DJ Giddens and Tyler Goodson both averaged less than 3 yards per carry. And those are the two guys battling it out for that running back 2 slot. Khalil Herbert, pretty solid, 7 carries, 29 yards. That's a little over 4 yards a carry, but 17 of those yards came on one rush. Ulysses Bentley, the fourth. Sorry, with a name like Ulysses, like I feel like there needs to be an S in there. I don't know why. He ran it well, but he played really late when the Ravens had all the guys that they're going to cut in the game. So the rushing attack against the Ravens wasn't very good, and the Colts also struggled to run the football yesterday against the Packers in this joint practice. That has to change. Obviously that has to change because like the Colts have to be able to run the football this year. If their offense is, hey, let's let Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones drop back and throw the football 35 times a game, then the Colts are going to be a really bad football team. They have to run the ball well, and obviously when Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones are bigger threats to run, like that'll change the way that teams defend the run against the Colts a little bit. Like they're obviously not going to run them very much in these preseason games or in these joint practices. You could tell in the Ravens preseason game, it felt like they had told Anthony and Daniel to not run. Like they both stood in the pocket the whole way. Kind of tough to tell with Anthony Richardson on that, just because, he got hurt on the second drive. So maybe that's a little bit different. If I'm him, I'm saying screw that, because your goal is to win the job. And a large part of Anthony Richardson's game is his ability to extend plays and get outside the pocket and run. And so if I was him, I'd say, sorry, coach, I am going to run the football because I want to be the starting quarterback. So I would like to see the Colts run the football a little bit better in terms of just the pure handoff game. Seeing the Colts starters out there is hopefully going to lead to better play from them in terms of their ability to run the football, because it was not very good against the Baltimore Ravens. So in that first quarter, I'm really going to be paying attention to how well the Colts run the football, because if they can't run the ball with their starters in tomorrow, then that'll actually become a legitimate concern for the Indianapolis Colts for the season. Now, the Colts' run defense also has to be better than what it was. It was brutal. I mean, absolutely brutal. 42 carries, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, just Keaton Mitchell had 9 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's just brutal. Rasheen Ali, don't know who that is, averaged 4 yards a carry on 9 carries. I mean, the Ravens just lined it up, and they ran the football whenever they wanted to. Whenever they wanted to. Colts were missing tackles. They weren't filling the run gaps. It was just not a good day from the Indianapolis Colts and their run defense when they when they had their preseason game against the Ravens. Now, once again, no Grover Stewart, no DeForest Buckner, no Zaire Franklin. Maybe them playing changes the way that maybe that changes, the run defense. It should, having all 3 of those guys on the field. But once again, in the first quarter, that is what I'm paying attention to, because they're playing the Malik Willis-led Packers. And even though it's a preseason game, I'm going to assume that they're going to try to run the football a little bit more often with Malik Willis under center as opposed to Jordan Love. So the run defense has to be better from the Colts on Saturday, tomorrow at 1 o'clock at Lucas Oil. And then the pass defense needs to be good as well. It was awesome against Baltimore. I mean, the Ravens completed 5 passes the whole game. The Colts had 2 interceptions. Really impressive. Really impressive day from the Colts secondary. Tomorrow, it needs to be the same thing, because they're playing against Malik Willis and Sean Clifford. Needs to be a big day for the Colts passing defense, because, the Colts put a whole bunch of money in that part of the defense. And Javarius Ward and Cam Bynum, it's the first time we're going to get to see them play in the preseason. And they're going to have an opportunity to make a really good first impression if they can just do their jobs. We're not asking for much here as Colts fans. Just do your job, and we will love you, because it didn't seem like the Colts secondary did that very often last year. Obviously, normal stuff. Would love to see guys like Leatu Latu kind of dominate coming off the edge. JT Tuimoloau, same thing. I would also like to not see JT Tuimoloau playing late into the fourth quarter of a preseason game. I get that you have to put someone out there, but that's what guys like Isaiah Land are for. Simple as that. Now, I'm not very worried about the Colts defense tomorrow, because it is Malik Willis and it is Sean Clifford playing quarterback for the Packers. But in addition to that, I mean, the defense played well yesterday. The offense did not. It was a bad day from the Indianapolis Colts and their offense. No one played well. No one. They struggled to run the football. The offensive line couldn't pass block or run block. And when they did block well and the pass protection did hold up, Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones turned the football over. And for the Colts, it all starts up front. It all starts up front. The offensive line's pass blocking was not good. But it wasn't just that. They couldn't pass protect. And they also committed a bunch of penalties. False starts, illegal formation because of tackles being lined up too far in the backfield. Like you can't do that. They gave up, 5 sacks yesterday on top of the penalties. And you're not going to win football games with Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones as your quarterback if you're giving up that many sacks and you're committing all of these penalties. Shane Steichen didn't seem, too concerned about the protection. I guess he feels like they're going to get that cleaned up, but he did sound concerned about the penalties. Here's Coach Steichen talking about the sloppy day from the Colts offensive line.
Well, I think more than anything is penalties. I mean, every time I looked up, I felt like, we were in the backfield or illegal formation. So we got to get that cleaned up. Obviously, penalties are a big part of those things. That's hidden yardage. You don't want to have that happen in the game. That just comes down to focus. And so we got to get that cleaned up moving forward.
Is that you see like a theme there at all with those penalties?
Yeah, I think it's just obviously locking in. It's, when you get hot and it's tired, that's when the focus has really got to pick up and lock in. Because when you are tired, that's when the most mistakes happen in football. So it's just, locking in mentally and going from there.
Coach Steichen right there talking about the Indianapolis Colts and the offensive line and just how bad it was yesterday, because there's really no other way to describe it. Really rough day from the Colts offensive line, gave up too many sacks, and of course, all the penalties as Coach Steichen was talking about right there. And that stuff clearly cannot happen. The Colts don't have a good enough quarterback to overcome penalties like the Chiefs do, and the Bills, and the Ravens, and the Rams, and the Eagles. They have enough talent that if it's, second and 15 or first and 15, they're going to be fine. The Colts don't. If it's 3rd and 3, I feel really good about the Colts' chances of converting the first down, right? Because you have the whole playbook available. You can hand it off to Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, or Daniel Jones can, they can run a lot like this read option thing, and they can pull it and keep it, and they can go and pick up a first down. You can obviously throw the football if you need to. And, if Richardson or Jones needs to, they can get out of the pocket and go pick up a first down. A lot of options there on 3rd and 3. There are not a lot of options. There are not a lot of options on 3rd and 8. So if it's 3rd and 3 and you get flagged for a false start or an illegal formation because, an offensive lineman wasn't lined up where he was supposed to be, and you go from 3rd and 3 to 3rd and 8, just go ahead and punt the football. Because when it's 3rd and 8 and the opposing team knows that you are throwing the football and you've got Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson making that decision and having to make that throw, chances are you're not picking up that first down. You're not. So the penalties have to be fixed. Now, I do expect for them to be fixed. The Colts were the least penalized team in the NFL last year in terms of yardage. They gave up about 40 yards worth of penalties a game. That led the NFL. So I do expect for Shane Steichen, amidst all of his flaws, calling trick plays and really high leverage spots in games, getting away from the run a little bit too often last year. To his credit, he's done a good job of building a disciplined football team that does a good job of not committing stupid penalties. They did yesterday. I guess that the heat was an issue. That's like the softest thing I've ever heard. Like, let's go. Let's lock in. Let's act like professional NFL football players. Okay? Like, let's go. Like, you've been practicing football in the heat since you were doing two-a-days in high school. Let's go. Come on. Now, the penalties I'm not super concerned about. As I said, Shane Steichen has done a really good job of just cleaning that up for, the Colts, in the 2 years that he's been here. I am concerned about the fact that the Colts apparently couldn't block this Green Bay Packers front because it's simply not that good. Rashawn Gary's probably their best pass rusher. He's never had a double-digit sack season. Kenny Clark has never had more than 7.5 sacks in a season. Devontae Wyatt has never had more than 5.5 sacks in a season. And then their other starting edge, Lucas Van Ness, a former first-round pick, is currently what everyone hopes that Leatu Latu is not, and that's a bust. Lucas Van Ness, first-round pick, has 7 sacks in total through his first 2 NFL seasons. They do not have a good pass rush. Now, maybe Lucas Van Ness has taken a jump and he's made it really tough. I don't know. I doubt that, though. Okay? If you can't handle this Packers front four, then that is incredibly concerning. And it adds on to the concerns that we saw last year. I understand that, it's Chris Ballard and he talks about the offensive line and how important it is. And he puts a lot of time and effort into bringing those guys in and all that kind of stuff. And this is supposed to be a good offensive line, an offensive line that I expect to run block well. I know that they struggled yesterday, but I'm not going to be deterred by one bad practice when it comes to the run blocking because they were really good at that last year. But the pass protection wasn't always great last year. Anthony Richardson was hurried the 16th most in the NFL last year. And I say that, and you're like, oh, that's average. And then you remember that, he missed 6 games. Like, he if he plays all 17 at that rate, like he's one of the most pressured and most hurried quarterbacks in the NFL last year. So the run blocking, am I concerned about it? Absolutely not. Not worried about that at all. But the pass protection is a major concern after the year that they had last year and the practice that they had yesterday. Trust me, I'm going to be paying a ton of attention to that in the first quarter against the Green Bay Packers when the Colts are playing all of their starters. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully they can get that pass protection cleaned up. Hopefully they can get the penalties cleaned up, and they can have a really good day tomorrow because the Colts offensive line has to be good. It has to be because Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson probably aren't going to have career resurgences. I guess for Anthony Richardson, it would be his first surge this year. It's probably not going to happen. So the offensive line has to be a strength for the Colts. Speaking of Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, it was a bad day for both of them. I'll talk more about it in 4 minutes.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, if you can also watch the show on X __ Jonathan Smith. Follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app. You know what's a pain in the butt? Deleting gym or canceling a gym membership. I switched gyms. They had an option because my wife goes to this gym as well. They gave me an option to link our accounts because it'd make it a little cheaper per month. And I was like, that's a great idea. And I tried to do it. And instead of linking our accounts, it created another account. And it's just frustrating. So I keep looking down. My wife keeps texting me. She's like, this is not working. I'm like, of course it's not. Because for some reason, canceling a gym membership just has to be the most complicated thing in the world. You know what else is complicated? The Colts offense, apparently, because Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson weren't very good yesterday. Now, Daniel Jones was still efficient, right? Completed 13 of his 16 passes, did all that in spite of a really bad day from the Colts offensive line. The issue is 2 of his 3 incompletions were interceptions. Can't have that. Now, apparently, the first interception was not his fault. Okay, as he hit Adonai Mitchell on a crossing route. I saw the video. I mean, really good throw. Ball is chest high out in front. Should have been able to just kind of accelerate through it and pick up some yards after the catch. But our guy, A.D. Mitchell, he dropped it. And the ball fell into the hands of a Packers cornerback. Okay, now, the second interception was bad. 2-minute drill, threw it directly to Packers linebacker Isaiah Simmons. Okay, now Daniel Jones in his post-practice presser said that the offense wasn't as sharp as it could have been yesterday. And aside from the interceptions, though, it seems like Daniel Jones found a way to have a pretty normal Daniel Jones day. A lot of safe throws for completions. That's who he is. He was just he was Daniel Jones for the day. He made apparently one nice throw on a deep crossing route to Josh Downs. But aside from that, it was Daniel Jones football. Average quarterback play with a couple of mistakes. And the issue is those mistakes. That can't happen. If Daniel Jones is going to give you just the bare minimum as a starting quarterback, then you can't throw 2 interceptions on the day. The year he made the playoffs with the Giants, the reason why the Giants made the playoffs is because they just didn't turn the ball over. Daniel Jones only threw 5 interceptions that season. That is a career low for him. And in addition to that, that came in the season with which he played the most number of games he's played in a single season, 16. He has to play that kind of mistake-free football to take the job from Anthony Richardson and to keep the job from Anthony Richardson. This quarterback competition doesn't end when week 1 starts. It ends at the end of the season. Because both of these guys have apparently been very even. And if Daniel Jones goes out there and we're 3 weeks into the season and the Colts are 0-3 and Daniel Jones has already thrown 5 interceptions on the year, then see it, Daniel. Anthony, get your butt in there. So he has to erase those mistakes. But other than that, a pretty normal day from Daniel Jones. Anthony Richardson was worse than Daniel Jones yesterday. Not a good day for Anthony Richardson. Just a tough day. Okay, now he threw less interceptions than Daniel Jones. That's a win. He threw more touchdowns than Daniel Jones. Based off of what I've read, that's how it seems. The issue is the interception that Anthony Richardson threw was bad. Pretty easy play for Packers cornerback Jonathan Baldwin. Very inefficient day from Anthony Richardson. 9 of 20 passing. That's only a 45% completion percentage. One of Richardson's completions was a red zone touchdown to Michael Pittman. But there was a bright spot for Anthony Richardson to close the day. He led a beautiful 2-minute drive down the field to score a touchdown. 3 straight completions, and then they turn around. They hand it off to Jonathan Taylor, who punches the ball in from 5 yards out. The Colts then go for 2. Anthony Richardson extends the play with his legs and finds Josh Downs in the back of the end zone for an 8-point possession. Now, apparently there were a couple drops as well with Anthony Richardson throwing the football. There were 2. That doesn't mean much to me. Just like 11 to 20 passing. Sure, it's better than 9 of 20, but not great. Not great. So reading kind of through everything on Anthony Richardson and how he performed yesterday, this sounds like Anthony Richardson from last year. A lot of bad, but there was some good in there that makes you think, if he could just figure it out. The 2-minute drive drill was crisp. Completion, touchdown. Like, can't ask for much more than that. The issue is, going into year 3, you cannot have inefficient days where you go 9 of 20 in practice. Practice should be easier than the game. It should be. And Anthony Richardson made practice look hard yesterday. And that can't be the case if he wants to win, the quarterback job. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. And this is part of why I thought that Daniel Jones was going to win the job, because he's just going to make the easy things look easy. And Shane Steichen knows that when he has a quarterback that can make the easy things look easy, he's going to have a chance to win some games. That's what happened with Gardner Minshew. He had a quarterback who could just do the easy things, and they're swing pass away from winning 10 games and winning the division that year. And, Richardson's up and downness, really tough to win that way. Really tough to win that way. He has to find a way to be more consistent. For the total camp, these are unofficial numbers. Daniel Jones was 138 of 194 passing. That's a 71% completion percentage. And Anthony Richardson finished 110 of 183, another unofficial number. That's a 60% completion percentage. And Shane Steichen was asked after practice yesterday the question that it seems like he's been asked every day after every practice: are you any closer to making this decision on who should be the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts this season? He's not any closer. He says that he wants to make the decision sooner rather than later. And then he said this.
I think so. I think that's part of it. I think obviously it's a big decision that's got to be made, and we'll work through it, and I'll have discussions, with Carly and Chris, and we'll work through it here soon.
Did you hear the end of that? I'm going to play it for you one more time in case you missed it.
And we'll work through it, and I'll have discussions, with Carly and Chris, and we'll work through it here soon.
I'll have discussions with Carly and Chris, and we'll work through it here again soon. Oh, my gosh. Carly Irsay, Colts' new owner, and Chris Ballard don't need to have any sort of say in who the starting quarterback is for the Indianapolis Colts. If Carly Irsay and Chris Ballard do not trust Shane Steichen to make the right decision to win football games this year for the Colts, if they don't trust him to make the right decision, then he needs to be fired. Why are you hiring a head coach if you don't trust him to make decisions? Because that's what this sounds like. Also, he's the head coach. It's his decision. And someone, followed up with the question of is it really your decision? That's essentially what they asked. And he was like, yes, it's my decision. I'm just going to loop them in and have some conversations with them. But ultimately, I will make the decision. My guy, it doesn't sound that way, Shane. It doesn't sound that way at all. And I get it. Carly Irsay is apparently super football savvy, and she's been hanging out on the sideline with the headset on, listening in, and that's cool. I'm sure she's learned a lot that way. But you can't sit here and tell me that Carly Ursay or Chris Ballard have a better idea of who the starting quarterback needs to be than Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen, it's his offense. He knows his offensive system better than Chris Ballard or Carly Ursay. Shane Steichen also knows Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson better than Carly Ursay or Chris Ballard because he's sitting in meetings with those guys every single day, whether it's a full team meeting or a quarterbacks only meeting. He knows those guys better than Carly Ursay and Chris Ballard do. Or he better. If he doesn't, then he needs to be fired. Shane Steichen is potentially coaching for his job. It needs to be his decision for that reason solely. And then you throw on all the other stuff, like he knows the quarterbacks better. He knows which quarterback fits his system better. If he's a good coach, then he's probably got a decent grip on the locker room, and he knows how the more influential players on the team are thinking or what they're thinking about Daniel Jones versus Anthony Richardson. And that is a really important part of this because you need your locker room bought into whoever the starting quarterback is of your football team. Simple as that. So they've got to just get out of the way, Carly Ursay and Chris Ballard, and let the head coach that you hired to pay a lot of money and that you pay a lot of money to, let him earn his money. Let him make this decision. It should be him, Jim Bob Cooter, Lou Anarumo, because Lou Anarumo is going to have a unique perspective on how defenses are going to react to these two guys, and the quarterback's coach. Those are the four guys who need to have some conversations about who the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts should be. The owner, get out of the way. I'm glad that Carly Ursay likes football. I'm glad that she understands it. That's awesome. But you're going to be biased because you're the owner and you are invested in the business side of the Indianapolis Colts. And let's just be really honest. Anthony Richardson is way more exciting, is going to, is going to have a higher number of people wanting to come see him play than Daniel Jones. Chris Ballard, his opinion is going to be biased because he drafted Anthony Richardson 4th overall. And he knows that if Anthony Richardson develops into a really good quarterback, then guess what? Chris Ballard is going to be here next year. He's biased. He is. For Shane Steichen, whether or not he gets fired, it is reliant on one thing. Does he win football games this season? If he does, he'll be back next year. If he doesn't, then he'll be the offensive coordinator for some other team. That's what's going to happen. He doesn't need to have any conversation with Carly Ursay or Chris Ballard other than the one where he walks into each of their offices and said, hey, me and the coaching staff, we have decided to start fill in the blank. That is the extent of the conversation around who the starting quarterback should be in terms of what Chris Ballard and Carly Ursay should hear. Simple as that. The Colts defense played pretty well yesterday, but I want to keep running with this quarterback stuff. Anthony Richardson is going to get the bulk of the snaps tomorrow. Daniel Jones will get the starts. My thoughts on what we need to see from Richardson tomorrow in 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__ Jonathan Smith to follow me there or watch the show there. And, of course, you can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app. The Dan Dockett Show back today from noon to 3, coming off the Live Pro-Am event yesterday. So you can stream his show there from noon to 3, and, of course, 14:30 a.m. as well. Anthony Richardson, what do we want to see from him tomorrow? So Daniel Jones is going to get the start for the Colts, but Anthony Richardson is going to play most of the game. He's going to play about a quarter and a half. And Anthony Richardson was asked yesterday what kind of his goals are for tomorrow. And Anthony Richardson understands what everyone wants to see from him.
For one, stay healthy, stay in the game. That's part of the biggest thing I need to, focus on and be able to just be out there on the field, because the best ability is availability. So I just want to make sure I'm staying healthy throughout the game and throughout the season. But just making my reads, doing my job as a quarterback, moving the ball, putting up points, just doing what a quarterback should do.
Did you have that?
Anthony Richardson right there talking about how he's got to stay healthy. That is the single biggest thing for him tomorrow, right? Because it doesn't matter if you're 6'4", can throw the ball over those mountains over there. If you're on the sideline, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you run a 4.4 at 6'3", 230 pounds. If you're not in the game, like these are the important things, and for him, you can only see them. You can only see all the greatness if he's in the game. So he's got to stay healthy. He has to stay healthy. It is the biggest thing. He can't get hurt. It's been his biggest issue. Like, yes, there's frustration with the accuracy and all those things. And it's, that's great. Not great. That's bad. But you know what I'm saying. This has been his biggest issue. I hate cliches. The best ability is availability. Don't like that cliche, but it's a true one. This has been his biggest issue, and he has to get it fixed. Now, after the staying healthy part, he has to do tomorrow what I've been saying all training camp long. He has to make the easy things look easy. That is the biggest thing. It's like, I don't care if he misses all the downfield plays. We know that those are going to come to fruition at some point, because that is the one thing that we've seen him do. Make big plays, big completions down the field, right? Like, we've seen enough of that to know that that's in his bag. The question is, can he do the little things? Like, he doesn't have to be Superman for the entire quarter and a half that he plays tomorrow. If he's Clark Kent tomorrow starting at 1 o'clock, I think that'll go a long way towards earning him the job, because that is the thing that we haven't seen from him. Can he hit A.D. Mitchell on a drag route? Can he hit Josh Downs on a little 5-yard in? Can he hit Alec Pierce when he runs a 7-yard out route? And so on. Those are the things that he has to do tomorrow. And if he does, then he'll probably position himself to maybe, just maybe, take control of the starting job over Daniel Jones, who was not very good in that game against the Ravens. He was very underwhelming, 10 of 21 passing for 144 yards. I mean, if Anthony Richardson goes out there tomorrow and he throws the ball 21 times and he's, 13 of 21 for 200 yards and a touchdown, no picks, like, we're going to feel significantly better about Richardson against live bullets than we are Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones simply wasn't very good against Baltimore. So he has to stay on the field, though. That is the biggest thing, and then he can focus on making the easy things look easy. He's also still in the process of learning what it is to be a franchise quarterback. Someone asked him yesterday how much he's learned about being a franchise quarterback, and I actually kind of like this answer from Colts' potential franchise quarterback, Anthony Richardson.
I feel like I have an idea of it. I wouldn't say I have a complete understanding of it yet because, I haven't been tagged as the franchise guy yet. So there's still some things I'm trying to learn. But, I definitely know a little bit more about the NFL and how things should be, taken care of and how your business should be put first. But, I'm just working and I'm just trying to be the best version of myself for everybody that's here.
Anthony Richardson right there talking about the importance of putting his business first and how, I do appreciate him saying that he doesn't understand fully what it is to be a franchise quarterback because he's not one yet. And he's right. He's not. I hope he eventually figures it out. And I hope he figures out everything that comes with being a franchise quarterback. Like the maturity level has been a concern from him really ever since he showed up, was very immature at 20 years old when he was drafted. The last 2 seasons kind of showed that. And what's really interesting about him is I feel like he has the proper demeanor to be a franchise quarterback. I think one of the best things that you'll see Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen do in their press conferences, they just do an exceptional job of making everything not a big deal. Hey, Patrick, you guys were down 17-0 at, the start of the second quarter. What'd you do to kind of build the comeback? And he's like, we just stuck the course. That's pretty much all that he says, and more words than that. And I do think Anthony Richardson has that kind of quality. He seems kind of like a shy guy, like he's not, super big and flamboyant. Like he's not doing the Cam Newton crazy hat stuff and crazy outfits. Like he seems like a relatively normal guy, just like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. The issue is there was just a lack of understanding last year. Don't tap out. Show up to work early, not on time, early. Be the first guy in the building. Be the last one to leave because you play quarterback and you have to not only set that example, but it is the hardest position to play on the field because of just how much you have to process mentally. So like I said, throughout really this whole training camp, it seems like he's kind of slowly figuring out a little bit more of what to say, when to say it, how to kind of make things not a big deal. So we're headed in the right direction. But to, sit here and be like, yeah, he sounds like a franchise quarterback all the time now would be wrong. Just the other day, he went on Sirius XM radio, talks about how he wanted to master the playbook. It's like, dude, you're going into year 3. You should probably be mastered by now. Like, what have you been doing when you've been hurt? Playing Xbox and rehabbing? Like, no, you should have been rehabbing and learning the playbook. So I do think he's taken strides, though. I do think he's done a much better job at the podium this training camp compared to last year. That being said, long season. He's got to do this for like 20 more weeks. Can you do it? I don't know. Very easy to fake something for a month. But for, a full, how many, for 5 months, though, that's much tougher. So we'll see if he continues to be mature when talking at the podium. Something else that I'd really like to see from the Colts tomorrow. I'd like to see them run the ball better. They didn't run the football very well at all against the Ravens in that first preseason game. If you just look at the numbers, 28 carries for 126 yards and a touchdown, they averaged a little over 4 yards per carry. And those numbers are inflated, though, by Riley Leonard scrambling 4 carries for 34 yards. In terms of the Colts' ability to just turn around and hand the football off, it wasn't very good. DJ Giddens and Tyler Goodson both averaged less than 3 yards per carry. Those are the 2 guys competing to be the main backup to Jonathan Taylor. Khalil Herbert had 29 yards on 7 carries, but he had 1 long run of 17 yards. And then, he had 12 yards on the other 6 carries. Like, that's not very consistent. So in terms of the ability to turn around and hand the football off, I would like to see the Colts just be a little bit better. Now, to be fair, the Colts obviously played their backup offensive line last game. We're going to get to see the starting offensive line for the full first quarter. So that first quarter, like they need to be able to run the football. We should see a little bit of Jonathan Taylor as well, even though I wouldn't play Jonathan Taylor. I think I'd play every starter not named Jonathan Taylor just because, he's the best player on your offense. I want to save all of the hits for him for the actual season. Simple as that. So they struggled to run the ball yesterday against the Packers. Like I said, between the penalties and the bad pass protection and the bad run blocking, I am the least concerned about the struggles to run the football, because this is something that the Colts did really well last year. Plus, once they get Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones more involved in the run game, they're obviously not going to do that in practice. Probably won't do it much either tomorrow. They'll run the ball a little bit better just because the defense has to account for a little bit more. But I want to see this offensive line move bodies tomorrow and reset the line of scrimmage a yard away from where it started. That is what I want to see, because that's what this offensive line is supposed to be. It's supposed to be elite. Be elite, please, because if they don't, it's going to be a really, really long year for the Indianapolis Colts. Speaking of running the ball, the run defense has to be better. The Colts defense had a really good day at practice yesterday. The secondary seems like the highlight, but the run defense was much improved compared to what it was against the Ravens. 42 carries for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Ravens offense in that first preseason game. Keaton Mitchell just tore it up, 9 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. Dearness Johnson had a pretty solid day, as did Rasheen Ali. So just a lot of successful rushes for the Ravens. That can't happen again. Okay, once again, we're going to see the starters in the first quarter. Maybe the reason for the bad rush defense against Baltimore was as simple as we didn't have DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart on the field. Maybe the answer is that simple. We're going to find out tomorrow at 1 o'clock when the Colts take on the Green Bay Packers. The other thing that I expect to continue to be good is this Colts secondary. They had a great day yesterday against Malik Willis. It sounds to me like the Colts defense did yesterday what we expected them to do in week 2 last year against the Green Bay Packers. They loaded the box. They didn't allow the Packers to run the football very well. And when Malik Willis had to throw the football, it didn't go very well. And when the Packers did their 2-minute drive to kind of close practice with their starters, they went 4 and out. Malik Willis was 0 of 4 throwing the football. When the Colts knew that Malik Willis was dropping back to pass, they made him look like a backup quarterback. That is what it should look like tomorrow, especially in that first quarter when Javarius Ward and Cam Bynum were out there. I'm also very intrigued to see who the Colts decide to play opposite Javarius Ward. Probably going to be Samuel Womack, but there's a lot of injuries in that cornerback room right now between Kenny Moore, who's got a knee, Justin Wally sadly tore his ACL. He's going to miss his whole rookie season. And then Juju Brents and Jalen Jones are both dealing with hamstrings. They're both progressing, but there is no timeline for their return, which means to me that they're not going to play tomorrow, and they don't need to. Also, in terms of the Colts secondary, having backups, not an excuse. You're playing Malik Willis and Sean Clifford. I don't think I need to say much else about the lack of talent that they're going to see at the quarterback position tomorrow. I know that the Packers have some pretty good receivers. Their receiving group, they don't like it as much as everyone else seems to. And I say that because they drafted a wide receiver in the first round. So should be some good work for the back end of the Colts defense as well. But my big thing, man, the front seven needs to be good. I want to see Leatu Latu be impactful. He had 2 sacks yesterday, which is, when it comes to the defense, that's really the only thing that I care about. I just kind of think that this Colts front seven is going to be bad. But hopefully the combination of Javarius Ward and Cam Bynum on the back end of the defense with a hopeful leap from Leatu Latu, hopefully that leads to the Colts, at a minimum, having a good third down defense, having Buckner and Latu be able to rush the passer, and then obviously being much improved on the back end of the defense. I'm hoping that is how we kind of get how the Colts defense looks this year, where it's like, hey, it's 3rd and 7. I feel pretty great about us on 3rd and 7. Probably don't feel great about us on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 4. But if it's 3rd and 7 or more, then I want to feel good about this Colts defense. And the only way that happens is if Leatu Latu becomes a guy. And he's going to play the whole first quarter tomorrow. And like I'm telling you right now, my eyes are locked into that dude. He has to be disruptive. And look, disruptive isn't always sacks. Sometimes it's just pushing the right or left tackle into the quarterback's lap, or, winning your rush, and then they have to step up, and then DeForest Buckner or Grover Stewart is there to finish the play. That is what I want to see from the Colts pass rush tomorrow. Leatu Latu coming off the edge and finishing plays with sacks, whether it's him getting the sack or forcing the quarterback to step in a direction that leads to someone else getting the sack. That's what I want to see, because I just don't think that there's enough talent in this front seven to be elite. So the hope is that Leatu Latu, who's supposed to be super talented, can provide a little extra push there. That way the Colts' third down defense is better. That's going to do it here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back again on Monday from 10 to noon as usual, breaking down Colts-Packers. Probably going to have Zach Hicks on to talk about everything that we see in the preseason game on Saturday. It's going to be a blast. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way next. Eddie White is going to join the show at 12:30, and they've got Sean Salisbury joining the show at 2:30 to break down these Indianapolis Colts quarterbacks. I'm sure Dan will talk about his experience at the Live Pro-Am yesterday as well. Going to be a great show. Don't touch that dial. I'll talk to you again on Monday at 10 a.m.